Okay guys, question 11. This question was actually done quite poorly by the state. Only 35% of the state actually got this correct, which is really low for a multiple choice question. So we want to pay particular attention to it. The reasoning why I think students performed poorly on this question is because of the detail in the question. There is actually a fair bit of writing, and when there's a lot of writing, students actually become lost in that detail and feel everything's really important. So what you want to do when you get a question like this, extract all the detail into a visual or a schematic, get it so you understand it in your own words, and therefore we won't have to refer to that question stem over and over and over. So let's do this. In some plants, a modified leaf forms an insect trapped as they're showing here. Motor cells are located along the midrib of the modified leaf. In their resting state, these cells are turgid and contain potassium ions at a concentration higher than the surrounding fluid. So if I set this up, I've got my motor cell, if you will. I'll just call this MC in here. The motor cell is saying that the K plus is actually higher within the cell than it is outside the cell. That's the first thing that I've noted. I also know that they're turgid, so within this cell there's actually a high amount of water in it. Then what happens here is that it says when the trap is actually triggered, potassium ions stream out. Okay, potassium ions stream out, which means to me that the second thing that happens here is that they stream out, K plus comes out here. The cells then lose their turgidity. So as a consequence of this, water, the third thing that happens is H2O will exit the cell because it's losing its turgid nature. The pressure in the surrounding cells then causes the modified leaf to bend and snap, and so the trap closes. And basically it's asking you what statement is true. So essentially what you want to do is use this schematic and look at what is true and what is false. So if we start with B, when the trap is opening, water accumulates in the motor cells by active transport. That's skeptical. We know water doesn't actually go by active transport. It's all about the idea of relying on other concentration gradients, but osmosis. So B is incorrect. When the trap is closing, potassium ions leave the motor cells because of the pressure in the surrounding cells. They've got that the other way around. Potassium ions leave the cells, and then that causes pressure to build in surrounding cells. So C is incorrect. When I look at D, when the trap is closing, water leaves the motor cells by osmosis. And that actually seems to be correct because we know osmosis is true for the movement of water. And what we see is when K plus leaves, the cell actually loses its turgidity, which means that H2O must exit that cell. And if H2O is losing, it loses that turgid nature, and therefore D is actually correct. And then we get rid of A given that D is correct. Now, when I look at this question, you see that just creating a schematic and what I can actually see so I understand it will mean that I don't have to refer to this massive stimulus of information. And that's the big thing about this particular question.